So congratulations on being part of this reality show, and it's now on season 2. So tell me why you wanted to join the reality show, and what do you think audiences will want to get or will get from the show?
I personally wanted to join the reality TV show because I thought it was an amazing opportunity that, will allow me to share my struggles and how I feel and what I'm going through as a 22-year-old, an Asian American 22-year-old, trying to figure out who I am, but also stay true to my family roots. And what I think I bring to the show is that we bring a different perspective in the sense that season 1, you get to see Judy, Wash, and Leslie and their struggles. But season 2, you will kind of see that younger generation and how we're still just trying to figure it out. Like our older cousins have had so much more experience and time, and we haven't. And it's nice to see that there's advice being carried over, and all like us giving advice to our cousins sometimes about just being free and remembering that even though they're parents, they're still individual people and they have every right to just enjoy their lives to their fullest, even when they have so many responsibilities.
Yeah, like the same way, like representation is just very important. Growing up, I was shunned for just for being Asian, whether it was the food I ate or the interests we have. But nowadays, being Asian is popular. Watching K-pop or watching anime or like to playing video games and like doing all those things, like eating Asian foods or eating sushi, like that's cool now. And it's finally like, even though it's mainstream now, we're able to share that, even before it wasn't cool, Asians are going through so many problems, and being able to show that we face everyday problems just like everyone else, and hopefully having at least one voice hear that and feel like they're not alone. I think that's just great motivation to just put our story out there, even though we might be a little bit like shy and nervous about putting our lives out in public.
Mm-hmm. So one very remarkable thing about the show is showing the struggle of the whole father and mother when they were struggling immigrants and then they made it in the United States. What do you admire the most about Bin Ho and Yu Ho,
Being, I mean,
the the parents?
Oh, so it's obviously not very easy to go from your home country and starting completely a new slate. And it's something that we both appreciated about our aunt and uncle. They started off from nothing or were given nothing, and they built an empire. And they were able to give it to their children as well as, their brother and sister's children. So they're able to start off with a good foundation and not just from the very beginning, just like they had. But I think it's also something that we want to share with them, that even though we are very appreciative of all the sacrifices they've done to provide for us and our family, that we just want to share that we also are struggling through our own problems, even if it might not be for survival. It's our mental health, our career, and our relationships with other people.
Do you
yeah.
think it's more harder for you guys, the young generation these days, especially with the Asian hate things and everything else in social media and outside world?
Hard in the sense of like how
And
we
it,
navigate things, or
yeah, do you think you have it harder now or easier compared to the older generation of Asian families?
I don't think it's like a harder or easier per se. I just think that everyone has been dealing with so many, problems throughout their lives, and everyone deals with things differently. And I think the problems are just different. Like our parents deal with things differently. We think of things differently and we deal with things differently, but that doesn't mean that one was harder than the other. It's just how we deal with them and what we go through.
Can you
I
describe the Ho children, Judy, Washington, and Reagan? And who do you think should inherit or be the leader of the family business?
Ooh, that I'm not sure about that. You want to go, Kim?
Well, I Judy Washington and Reagan's family is really similar to me. I am the oldest daughter who's often overshadowed by her younger brother because he's the male. And in our culture, the male carries on the family last name and our traditions. But what's so great and unique about being Asian American is that we're not in Vietnam anymore, and women have so much power. You know, they are career driven. They don't have to be homemakers anymore if they didn't want to. And respect to those who are, because whether or not you're, you know, a career woman or a homemaker, the struggle is so real. But because of that, I don't necessarily think there should be anyone, like a single person running an empire. They can do it together. And that's what's so great about living in America, is that it's not, you know, it's not just me. It's us. And what's so unique about being Asian American is that we both have this combined mindset of being a collective as well as being an individual. So I don't necessarily think any of them should single-handedly run the empire. I think they could do it together, and every aspect that they bring will balance out each other and help maintain the empire for many years to come.
Mhm.
And were your parents as strict as the whole parents or not? And how similar or different were they?
My parents were, I think all of our parents are a little bit strict. They do stick to tradition, but my mom is a singer and my dad came here when he was 7. So they are strict in the sense that they want me to know my values, where I came from, like important cultural things, but they were not as strict as they kind of guided me or persuaded me down one specific career path. But I think the fact that they weren't like that forced me to be strict on myself and have a goal and have a plan of where I want to be, because they just wanted me to be happy and they wanted me to live my life, but they were trying to balance, like, you know, a American parenting style with a traditional Vietnamese style, and it's hard to find that when they're still themselves are learning who they are.
I'm a little bit different. My parents are very traditional and they were really strict growing up. However, you know that saying, like an old dog can't learn new tricks. Even though they are really strict and they have a lot of conservative views, they've learned to respect that it's okay that I might have different opinions and values and viewpoints from them. Even though they not necessarily agree with me, they're learning and adapting. And I think that's one of the most important things to, you know, to able to navigate through life, especially in America, where it's a huge mixing pot of cultures and identities.
Mhm. Would you raise your own children the same way that you were raised?
I would do a mixture. I think I've learned what I liked and what I didn't like from my own upbringing, because of course we're all human, we have our own faults. So I will have a modified version of how I was raised, because even though I definitely agree that we should all have, you know, be expressive to ourselves, I think it's very important to remember our cultural values or familial values, because that's what uniquely makes us Vietnamese American, because we're both Vietnamese and we're both American.
Mm-hmm. I also agree with Kim that I would do a mixture of both, but I would for sure, I think I would be a little bit stricter on my kids for sure.
I would be less strict.
When was the last time you visited Vietnam?
I went back to Vietnam right before the pandemic in 2018, 2019, like that, those months. And it was really great because I got to see my mom. And now that I'm older, I can see what her career really entailed. And like people would stop her on the side of the street to like take pictures with her and like tell me like, oh my God, like I love your mom. She's great. And to me, I always grew up as like, you know, she's just my mom. Like I would sit there with her like while she was, you know, performing in the backstage, and going back to Vietnam, and really I got to appreciate who she was as a person and see like how hard it is to have her career. And I always knew that it was, but it wasn't the same until I got sat there and really, you know, lived through it with her.
The last time I was in Vietnam was, I think, 2018 as well. I grew up visiting Vietnam very often because my mother's family was there, and I would go from when I was, you know, age 1 up to when I was 21 in college. And it's so interesting to see how much of an impact that American culture, American media influences other countries, and to see how much Vietnam has changed. And I'm sure it's the same way in every, every country, every other Asian country as well, how much of an influence that American culture has on it. So I think it's very important to share our story so that, other countries understand the struggles, and to learn that even though, they have their own cultural values, that it's okay to, to think for yourself sometimes. It's okay to be individualistic and self-express, even if your culture calls for togetherness and always being, one.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and good luck on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.